Shalom, peace and blessings, and welcome back to the Two or More Ministries channel. My name is Joe. I am your brother and I'm your friend. And we know where two or more are gathered, He is in our midst. And so today, I wanted to share something that happened to me today. And the reason why I'm sharing this is a form of letting go and an act of forgiveness, but also receiving insight and revelation into what is happening to not only myself, but others out there that are truly seeking after the heart of God with all their heart, all their mind, and all their soul. You know, some of us say the chosen, whatever it may be, you're a disciple, and you truly have a understanding where the scales of your eyes have fallen off and God has given you ears to hear and eyes to see. And so, I never want to bring a heavy message, but sometimes we go through those situations where we experience the unseen forces working their hands at things. And it's always tough when the agents work through your family and ones you love. So I'll give you a backstory of what occurred to me today. And it's kind of been leading up, it's been building up, but today was like the straw, let's say, that broke the camel's back, right? And so if you're out there, if you've been dealing with, certain family members that have been treating you harshly, just know that it's not always them. We love our enemies. We know that those who are often in sin are separated from God, so they're more prone to be used by the enemy. And so, I went on live this morning, had a great time sharing that message on live, went out to the gym, got a good workout in, ate good, was taking care of myself. And while I was at the gym, my sister sends me a message. She's like, hey, you want to come over? We're barbecuing and we're going to watch the UFC fight. So a little bit of me was hesitant. Like, I've been hesitant about going over to my sister's house every time she invites me, because my brother-in-law, he's always very combative. He wants to, like, contradict or always, like, be opposing to things that I'm sharing or speaking upon. Like, whatever it is, whatever conversation, he always takes the standpoint of opposition. And I've been noticing this as I've been visiting their houses, and I've been staying, pretty quiet for the most part about it. But there's times where we get into dialogue where we go back and forth. And a lot of it is because, unfortunately, and I don't want to air out dirty laundry, but they're in sin because they're constantly consuming alcohol. They have a spirit of drunkenness, an alcoholic spirit. And so I kind of had an uneasy feeling about going, but whatever. I went, I rode my motorcycle over, and was having a good time while I was there. Ate a good plate of food, thanked them. We were having conversation. I was my bright and cheery self. And then, as always, the conversation started getting into deeper things, right? And so, like me, I don't want to have these surface level conversations. I talk about things from a deeper perspective that I have to realize not everyone, especially those of this world, are going to understand, you know? And so we get into a conversation, I start talking about, oh, did you see, the opening Olympic ceremony and how it was a satanic ritual and it was blasphemous, so on and so forth. And we get into this dialogue, and he's already, let's say, he's had a few beers already by the time I had gotten there. And so I could already see that spirit within him manifesting as I'm hearing the things that he's saying to me. And so we get into a topic, and basically at the point where I should have held more patience, I called it out for what it was. And I said, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear will understand these things that I'm speaking upon. I mean, I was basically saying you're seeing things from a world's perspective. You're not seeing things from above. You're seeing them from as they are on earth. And I basically said, like, I basically said, like, you don't have a real relationship with God. And when I said that, oh man, all hell broke loose, right? But I was saying it because I was saying the truth, but there's ways of addressing the truth in subtle manners and gentleness, and that's something that I'm still learning, right? And so it ends up boiling over to the point where, like, once I said that, it was just like something switched in his eyes, and like he was just really unreasonable, and just like he started calling me crazy. And it was just like I didn't need to be in that environment, right? And it's just sad because this is, my sister's husband. I mean, I have nieces and nephews from them, and every time I go over there, I just show them love and affection. I'm not ever trying to belittle them. I'm never ever trying to get in an argument, but it's like every time I go, like he wants to press an issue on something, right? And so I've been separating myself from even attending certain events, and so it got to the point where it was like enough is enough. And although I love them and I forgive them, like, I understand, like, the wheat at this point is being separated from the chaff, right? And like, we can't hang out amongst those who are living separated from God. Like, we can't have oneness in relationship with them, because there's always going to be something, which is these unseen forces that are going to come through and manifest those, I wouldn't say empty vessels, but those weaker vessels, those individuals that have given themselves to the world and are not seeking God and building a relationship, and it's unfortunate to see other members of your family dragged into circumstances where they have to be a cornerstone for their family, but they're also like in contention with themselves because it's their lifestyle, and and you see the things that are subsequently caused by that through various things that are occurring within the structure of the household, right? And not saying that it's bad. All blessings and praise to my family. Like, I wish the best upon them, but I just wish that they would seek God more than from a surface level. And I see this with a lot of people, and I know that there's many others out there that are experiencing this, unfortunately, right? And so, I ended up leaving, and then I got home and I was praying about it, and he's like, God was just like, I go to bat for you. Don't worry about it. And I'll give you some scriptures to read. And so I started reading, and the first thing, that came to my mind is Mark 3:34, which says, Jesus replied, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers?" Then he looked at those around him and said, "Look, these are my mother and brothers. Anyone who does the God's will is my brother and sisters and mothers." And just that alone, it paints a picture of, like, yes, we have family in this world, but sometimes our family, certain family members, are not going to be walking that same narrow path. But those who are true children of God, those are your heavenly family. And I know, like, there's others out there that maybe you feel isolated, alone, maybe like you feel like a black sheep, like you can't relate to even your own household. But listen to the words of Jesus, who's saying, "Who is my mother?" Like blood, like, who are my brothers? But he's looking amongst the disciple and he's saying, "These are my mother and brothers. Anyone who's doing the will of God is my brothers and sisters." So, if you're living in sin actively, consuming worldly pleasures, you're encapsulated and trapped in strongholds and bondage of alcoholism, like, you're going to be subject to be influenced demonically, because you're opening up your spirit by drinking spirits. And unfortunately, it happens to the ones that are closest to us and we love. And there's a point in time where God gives up these individuals to the sin that they want to dwell in, right? And it led me into Romans 1:28. It says, "And even as they did not retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do the things which are not convenient." And so you see it, like, those who claim to actually have a relation, or have, like, "Oh, I believe in God," but, like, they won't even have a relationship with God. They won't actively read the Bible. They don't have an active prayer life. They're not actively fasting. They're maybe just going to church once a month, maybe just on the Sundays. They're not really putting in that work. And so they're so entrenched in this mind frame of the world that they will call you crazy. And God, he gives them up to that reprobate mind because they're not even seeking the knowledge of God. They maybe have scratched and sniffed barely the surface. Maybe they've taken a catechism class or gotten baptized when they're a child, and they say, "Hey, like, I'm good, like, God's got me. I believe there is a God," but they're not actively living for God. They're actively living in the world. And it's a stark revelation that we're getting closer and into the end times. But it's not anything to be afraid of, because God gave us not a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind, right? But we also have to understand what Christ has come here to do. Like, we have to understand that walking this path isn't always going to be one that's full of sunshine and rainbows. It's going to be difficult. It's going to challenge us. There's going to be things that come up that we experience that try to steal your joy and break the peace that God has given you, right? And so automatically I went into Luke 51 through 53 or 54, and it says, "You think that I have come to give peace on earth?" This is Jesus talking. "You think I have come to give peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, in one house, there will be 5 divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. This is Christ speaking, that those who are truly seeking God, you've been set apart and you've been separated for a reason. And it's not that God's coming to bring peace, but he's giving us this wisdom and understanding that, like, the sheep can't hang out with the goats. Like, they're not gonna mix. You know what I mean? Even though that Christ has come for those that are in need and sick, it's for those that are willing and able to accept the word through faith and belief. Like, you can't persuade anyone to come to the truth. They're gonna have to come to a self-realization of that truth on their own. All you could do is speak in spirit and truth and try to help pasture those that are lost back into the sheepfold. But there are going to be those that God has given up to a reprobate mind. And it's an understanding of these things that can be challenging for believers on their path, because we see it in Ecclesiastes 1:18. It says, "For much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief." And I know a lot of us out there are compassionate, we're empathetic, we love and we want to have this union and fellowship and understanding of God, and we want things to be good. But with that wisdom that comes from seeking God, there's going to be sorrow, because you see that the masses are being led astray. And even some of the ones that you love the most, some of the ones that are closest to you, you see that they're going on a path that leads to death and destruction. You know, God says, you know, don't fear the one that just could kill the flesh, but fear the one that could kill flesh and the soul. You know, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, but we're going to see that big separation coming, especially as things start to transpire. They're throwing it right in our faces. We're seeing it, and people are still keen on not hearing and seeing the truth. They still have the scales on their eyes, and now they're being used as tools and agents of deception. And if you're out there, if you've experienced this, if you are experiencing this, just know that you do have a kingdom family that's out there, that's fighting for you every step of the way, that's there to hear you out, that's there to pray for you, that's there to uplift you, that's there to encourage you. Know that whatever it is that you're experiencing, especially coming in your own household, in your own family, it's not by the doing of God, it's by the doing of them following a path that's separated from an actual true walk and relationship with God. And it's unfortunate, but that's where your wisdom and understanding comes in, because as you understand this, as God imparts the wisdom, there's going to be a little bit of sorrow in there, because there's nothing new under the sun, and there's a time and place for everything. Like, I've experienced a lot of hardship, you know, and I relate my life story to those of Joseph, those of David, of Daniel, of Moses, of all those Job, like that, have experienced these things. And in that walk, like, I never given up on God, but to have family members even witness what you've gone through, that are part of your same household, and not truly be there for you, but actually show their cards, that they're actually showing their true face. It's a stark revelation that could bring grief, but it also brings joy and peace of mind, knowing that you are solidified in your walk, and you're one step closer into receiving the blessings that God has planned for you. He's preparing that table in the presence of your enemies. Like everything that you've probably spoke to your family, that you've imparted to them, whether it be wisdom, eventually they're going to see it, and they're going to come to you and maybe ask for forgiveness, whatever it may be. But they're going to come, and there's going to be a day of your redemption through them seeing the truth. And if they don't see it, it's just because God has given them up, and we understand that, God didn't come here to bring peace, but there's going to be division. The wheat are separated from the chaff. Like I said, the sheep cannot hang out with goats, and you have to understand that your true family is the true body of Christ. The remnant, it's not a lot of people out there that really have a heart posture that's actively seeking God. A lot of people are double-minded. And you know what the word says about a double-minded person. You can't have one foot in and one foot out and expect the Holy Spirit to actively be moving on your behalf. So just know that God loves you with all his heart. I love you with the love of Jesus Christ. I'm your brother, and I want to share these things, not to bring heaviness upon your life, but to have a certain understanding. Like, we are going to go and face these challenges, but God is our rock and our foundation. He is ultimately going to have your back. So if you're feeling this separation from your family, if you've been set apart, you have to make time to really start seeking God on a more intimate level, so you could experience that peace that surpasses all understanding, because He will refine you in that fire, and you are going to receive your crown. So family, with that being said, much love to you, peace and blessings, and I hope you have a peaceful resting night. May God be with you always. Much love.